Hello, everybody. Today I would like to read and analyze with you the passage that is in your book on page 356. And it is the opening chapter of the novel Mrs. Dalloway, written by Virginia Woolf. As I told you, we have an external third-person narrator who leads the technique of the interior monologue. So this is not a direct interior monologue as in Molly's soliloquy, but this is an indirect interior monologue, and we understand it from the presence of this personal pronoun she. Okay, for Lucy had her work cut out for her. The doors would be taken off their hinges. Rumpelmeyer's men were coming, and then, thought Clarissa Dalloway, what a morning, fresh as if issued to children on a beach. What a lark, what a plunge. So up to this point, we are reading Mrs. Dalloway's thoughts related to the present. We know that from now on there is a shifting in terms of time because Mrs. Dalloway starts to recollect a memory from the past, and she is stimulated to the collection of this memory thanks to a noise that she hears, and the noise is the noise of the hinges. I will underline you this element. So, for it had always seemed to her, when with a little squeak of the hinges, which she could hear now. So you see, this is a noise that she heard when she was in another place. We will soon find where it is. And she could also hear it now. She had heard it in the morning in her house. So what a lark, what a plunge, for so it had always seemed to her, and this is the past situation. It has always seemed to her that with a little squeak of the hinges, which she could hear now, she had burst open the French windows and plunged at Barton. So we know that the memory is set in Barton, and we also know when it is set, because she later on talks about her age. How fresh, how calm, stiller than this, of course. The air was in the early morning, like the flap of a wave, the kiss of a wave, chill and sharp, and yet for a girl of 18, as she was, and this is the I'm sorry, sometimes I make a mess. So this is the reference to the time. For a girl of 18, as she was, solemn, feeling as she did, standing there at the open window, that something awful was about to happen, looking at the flowers, at the trees with the smoke winding off them, and the rooks rising, falling, standing and looking up until Peter Walsh said. So we are introduced now to a new character. We have seen the thoughts of Mrs. Dalloway, and here we have Peter Walsh. There is this presence. He was the man that she had loved before she married to another man. Musing among the vegetables, what was that it? I prefer mint to cauliflower. Was that it? He must have said. So this is the memory of sentence, of a couple of sentences pronounced by Peter Walsh. Must have said it at breakfast one morning when she had gone out onto the terrace. Peter Walsh. He would be back from India. Here now we are in the present situation again, because she's thinking about something that he had told her and that now she's remembering. He would be back from India one of these days. So again, here we have a present situation. One of these days, at present, June or July, and we know that it is June, so Peter Walsh might most likely come, and indeed she will meet him throughout the day. She forgot which of his letters she forgot, for his letters were awfully dull, they were boring. It was his sayings one remembered, so she never remembered the content of the letters, but only some sayings. his eyes, his pocket knife, his smile, his grumpiness, and when millions of things had utterly vanished because she didn't remember anything about him, how strange it was, this is her thought, a few sayings like this about cabbages. So she's saying that she's surprised that the only thing she can remember about Peter Walsh is something, a sentence, a couple of sentences that he had pronounced in the past, the one about cauliflowers and vegetables here. She stiffened a little on the curb. Again, we go from the past to the present because she stiffened a little on the curb. This is the limit between the street and the pavement, waiting for Dartnell van to pass. A charming woman, Scrop Purvis thought. We have another person that is thinking. Who is this person? We find out that this person is, knowing her as one does know people who live next door, this person, Scrop Purvis, is her neighbor, and she meets him in the street, and we have a description of Mrs. Dalloway through Mr. Scrop Purvis' thought, because he thought about her, a touch of the bird about her, of the jay, blue-green light, vivacious, though she was over 50, and now we know her age, she's over 50. In the evening, she's celebrating her 52nd birthday, and grown very white since her illness, so we also know that she had an illness. There she pierced, never seeing him, waiting to cross, very upright. So you see what happens throughout this passage. There are some elements that belong to the external world and some element that belongs to the internal world. So the elements belonging to the external world while she's walking around London, because we know that she is in London, are basically the noises. So, for example, the noise of the hinge, which recollect her past memories, and then the fact that she's stopping to let a van pass, and she's seen by her neighbor, who describes her, and so we receive her description through his thought. So we have a mixture of thoughts, the thoughts of the past and the thoughts of the present of Mrs. Dalloway. But we also have the thought of the present of Mr. Purvis, Scrop Purvis. For having lived in Westminster, how many years now? Over 20. One feels, even in the midst of the traffic or walking at night, Clarissa was positive, a particular hush or solemnity, an indescribable pause, a suspense, but that might be her heart affected, they said, by influenza. So here again we have her thoughts. This is the passage where Mrs. Dalloway is thinking out loud again. I mean, she's thinking throughout the pages because she's not speaking aloud in the street. We see her thoughts, so I can say that she's thinking out loud. Before the Big Ben strikes, again, we have another noise. We have two noises. The noise of the hinges and the noise of the Big Ben strikes, which is important because it marks the external time. You have to keep in mind that throughout the novels of the modernist writers, you have both internal and external time, subjective and objective time, and this is very important. What happens into our minds doesn't follow into the mind of the characters of these novels doesn't follow the chronological order. The chronological order is kept alive thanks, for example, in Mrs. Dalloway, to the strokes of the Big Ben. And out it boomed, first a warning, musical, then the hour, irrevocable. I think then you have finished. The leaden circles dissolved in the air. So this is what happens in the passage that is in your book. I think it is quite clear, but if you have problems, you can always send me a message and ask me what, or next time, if we can meet via Skype, we will talk about this again. Thank you very much for listening, and I wish you a nice day as usual. Bye bye.